Hey everyone, I'm Victor Dwyer, and this is the Mind Workshop podcast. Today we have Nicole on, and we're going to talk everything about how to really give forgiveness in yourself and how to eventually forgive others. I'm really excited about this episode. Nicole, please let's start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you're one of the most patient people in the world.
Woo!
And let's go through that a little bit.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here today. Any chance I get to talk about self-love, self-forgiveness, that's really an opportunity for teaching, not just for myself, but for others. And yes, Victor, I have learned big patience today, helping you had to help me totally get into this. And we're like right at an hour. That took an hour. So
Yeah.
and sometimes I just look at things and I know a lot of things always happen for a reason. So whether or not we're supposed to be here at 3:56 Eastern time or whatever, I'm just going to roll with it and answer any questions you have for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to start out when it comes down to forgiveness. You have a lot of experience and a lot of people. I'd love to hear from you. What is the main reason why people don't forgive themselves? Is it because they've done something in the past? Is it because they hate who they are? I'd love to hear from you. What is the biggest reason why people don't forgive themselves these days?
I think one of the biggest reasons is, people hold guilt inside themselves. If they've done something that they think has wronged someone, or possibly I look back at things that, like with my girls, you say to yourself, boy, I wish I'd done that different, or things you said when you were younger that hurt people. And
Mhm.
to actually practice forgiveness and or self-forgiveness, you have to look at yourself first. And
Yeah.
that's not always the easiest thing to do, because when you look at yourself truly, if you do mirror work or if you go deep inside of yourself, you have to admit that, it takes two in every situation if you're dealing with forgiveness or self-forgiveness. And we're awful hard on ourselves with this self-forgiveness because we sometimes even forgive others before we forgive ourselves. And that's really a tough one.
Yeah.
And what you have to realize, and this is what really helped me on my path of self-forgiveness for some of the things I've done, whether it was divorce or decisions I made for myself or decisions I made for the kids, is I just thought about it and I thought, everything I did with the information that I had at that time. And
Yeah.
I realized that I made the best decision I could. I didn't always have enough information, but I did the best I could. And when I realized that, I thought, well, I never did anything really out of meanness or malice or to hurt someone. And when I realized that, it became easier and easier to just kind of go inside of myself and forgive myself.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things when it comes down to forgiving yourself is that I'm a big believer in fate. And what's that caused me is no matter what happened, that would have happened every single time, no matter how many things I would have gone through. And what I mean by that is with fate, you believe that everything happened for a reason. So let's say if I mess up and trip and I break my knee, okay? Then no matter how many times that situation got replayed, I would have always broken my knee every single time. Yeah, I could have said, "Oh, I wish I would have picked up my foot a little bit, or I wish I wouldn't have tripped." No matter what happened, I would have broken my knee because I'm a big believer in fate. And
I
the
am
reason why I
too.
believe that is because that it makes it where I don't always replay that in my mind saying, "Oh, I wish I wouldn't have tripped. Oh, I wish would have done that." And it makes me feel better about myself because there is no time machine. No matter how much we want to believe that there's a time machine, there is no time machine where you can go back and change what happened. And
No,
there's no point to ruminate about it saying, "Oh my gosh, I wish I would have done that." Just learn from it, move on and go. That's the way to approach it. And you don't want to ruminate and constantly beat yourself up. There's no point to. We don't have to constantly beat ourselves up every single second because we mess up on something. You learn from it and you have to move on. You have to forgive yourself. at some point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you believe in fate, and let's just say, for instance, that you did break your knee, how do you know that that didn't happen to keep you out of something that would have happened that would have been worse? Maybe you
Yeah.
were somewhere you shouldn't have been. You would have got hit by a car and maybe died. You just don't know. So when you go
Yeah.
with faith, you can feel faith. You can feel it, and that's working for you. So yeah, I'm absolutely, I believe that too. I fully believe that. And what good is it to look back? You can't change the
Hmm.
situation, but maybe you can change and reframe how you feel about it. Or if you do owe someone forgiveness for what you've done, maybe just reach out, or just in your mind is very powerful. You don't even have to talk to the other person to forgive them, or
Hmm.
for them to forgive you.
And like good and bad is very subjective, meaning that there's an old story about a farmer and his son, about how his son breaks his leg, and he talks about how horrible, and the all these people go up and ask the farmer. They go, hey, like, isn't that horrible that your son broke his leg? And they go, I guess, like, but we'll see. And then eventually, like, the Chinese military comes and says, hey, we're going to take your son to the military. And they go, oh, he broke his knee. Never mind. We don't want him. And then, like, where I'm going with it, having things that are good and bad are very subjective. For example, I lost one of my operation managers in my company. And what happened was I found a better operation manager, but in that moment I was like super down. I was like, dang, I lost my operation manager. That sucked. And in that moment I was sad, but what it led me to is finding a better operation manager for my company. So good and bad is very subjective, and you don't know where things are going to go and where things are going to lead to. So never say like, oh, I'm in such a horrible situation, because you don't know, realize what that horrible situation and where the good things are going to come from that. So it's all subjective.
It really is. And I think that's the point of faith, is knowing that whatever happens, it's happening for a reason. Might seem bad at the time, but it takes you on that different path to something much better for both people. So your outcome is actually a very good one when you reflect back on something like that.
Yeah. Do you have any other strategies when it comes down to forgiving yourself for the things? I used to be really, really bad about criticizing myself every single second, every single day for not working, and not working every single second. And that caused me to ruminate and hate myself at the end of the day for not working all this time. And eventually I had to forgive myself, saying, hey, like, it's just okay to progress. Like, you don't have to be perfect every single day. It's okay to just progress a little bit. And I'd love to hear from you. What are some ways that we can forgive ourselves, for the people out there that are hating themselves?
The first thing I would tell you to look at is explore your why, first of all. Why are you feeling that way? Are you feeling lazy? Are you feeling conditioned, that society made you feel like you had to work every minute of every day? Because that happens a lot. So you're basing what you're doing off of some thought that maybe I'm supposed to work 8 to 10 hours a day. So reflect on that a little bit. One of the simplest and the most profound methods I use, it's called Ho'oponopono. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
It's an ancient Hawaiian forgiveness practice, and I discovered it. I absolutely love Hawaii. I've been there like 10 times, and if you've ever been in their culture, they're very laid back, they're very kind, they're very helpful, and they don't work 8 to 10 hours a day. And that's
Hmm.
why this made me think about that. But you know what? That's their culture, because oftentimes when you're working, you're not really living. And their idea is with Ho'oponopono, it's Ho is to make and Pono is right. So to make right. So when they have issues within their family or within themselves, what they do is, as a family unit or singular too, they use Ho'oponopono, and that's everybody getting together and maybe talking about their grievances. And if you think about the States and about you and I, and so often we don't want to talk about it, we don't bring it up, we let it just boil inside of us till there's so much anger. They don't do that. They talk about it right then and there. They just talk about everything that's bothering them, and they agree to agree, or they agree to disagree, and they let it go. They don't keep any of that anger inside of them. And it's 4 phrases. It's I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And what you're really doing is you're saying that internally. Now, the way I did it to get over a divorce was I visualized my ex-husband on a stage. And even though, I think I shouldn't go into it, but he did a lot of things very hurtful to me. But I
Hmm.
didn't want to carry that hurt inside of me. So I envisioned him on a stage. I would just pull him out. And visualization is very, very powerful. So I
Yeah.
saw him up there. And, always put your hand on your heart, because your heart's your truth center. And your heart is where love is stored. And that's where these things really need to come from. They need to come from like your truth, your feeling, what you're feeling inside of you. And I would just say those four phrases over and over and over a couple times a day. I'd even take time out of my day just for 5 minutes to lay down and just repeat those phrases. And after about 2 weeks, I thought, this is really weird. I could feel that anger melting away. I could feel that resentment, dissipating. And my first thought was, this is free. How is this going to work? But it did. It was very effective. And that's one of the things that I tell people. If you want to forgive yourself or others, those are very powerful words. I love you and thank you. I forgive you. If you think about words, everything has a vibration. Every word you use, whether it's good or bad, a love is going to be a very high vibrational word. Hate is going to be very low vibrational. And when I hear you talking about being angry at yourself or being mad about something, you're holding in something that's very negative inside of yourself. And eventually,
Mhm.
something like that can actually make you sick, because it's called dis-ease. You're at dis-ease with your body. And it's very unhealthy. So we just kind of look at it. We do it within ourselves. We say those four phrases, whether it's for somebody else, whether it's for you. And even if you do it just for yourself, you're going to raise that vibration, and that just goes out into the universe. So it's very healthy for everyone involved.
So how so if someone does something horrible to you, or you're ashamed of yourself for what you did, how can someone say those words and really mean it to feel better about themselves? So what, like you said, to do those four words, but how can they really do that and implement that in their lives?
It's one of those things where you might start out not wanting to do it, but if you and sometimes you can't even be like sincere about it at first, because what you'll
Hmm.
do is you'll say it and then you'll be like, no, he doesn't deserve my forgiveness. And then all of a sudden I get that feeling inside of myself, that anger, and it's like, I don't like that feeling. That feeling doesn't feel good. And what you're doing, and I tell people this, if, for instance, with my ex, he didn't care enough about me to not hurt me. So why am I still carrying that inside of me? If he didn't care enough, why should I carry that anger that he thrust upon me for myself? And you just
Yeah.
keep doing things over and over. And they say 21 days makes a habit. And what I would tell people is just try it. See if you can ease things away. And then if you can't, just through forgiveness, there I do a lot of quantum healing. Quantum healing is taking you back to maybe your childhood, and there's something in there that you experienced in your subconscious. You don't know what it is, you don't know why, but we go back in and find it and we release that, because that could be the problem too if forgiveness isn't working. There's so many things that we just, we think we just pop a vitamin and we're good, but boy, we carry some inner trauma with us that you can't believe.
Can you go into a little bit about how, like, diving into the different levels of forgiving yourself? So it sounds like there's like the surface level, which is like
Mhm.
using words, those four phrases to kind of help heal yourself. And then if that doesn't work, using quantum healing to kind of dialing that down, like visualization and reigniting that past childhood memory, and to like spark that up. And it sounds like a little bit of shadow work,
Yeah.
wasn't mistaken in there as well. Um, and can you go into like those different levels real fast?
Exactly. And when what I would say what you start with is you start with yourself, because that's where everything starts within you. And what I did is I just started saying the phrases over and over, Victor. And
Yeah.
I could feel a difference after about a week. And it was almost like a heavy sigh. You know, it's a little bit of relief. Okay, something does feel different. What's going on here? And then I
Hmm.
got a little more intense about it. Is I would do those phrases, and then I would go into a light meditation. And when you're in meditation, you're still awake, but you're in this theta state, which is when you're relaxed and your mind will pick up subconscious thoughts. And so what I would do is I'd meditate and I would say, I forgive him. I forgive him. Well, guess what? My subconscious picked it up and started working on it for me all the time. And that's how that works. So every day I would just keep doing it and doing it. And I just felt this relief. I felt a release. And then finally I just let go because I didn't want to carry it anymore. It's, you know, the first day you're like, I'm not going to do this. He doesn't deserve it. Second,
Yeah.
third, fourth day, you're like, man, I'm feeling better. I don't know what this is, but it's way better than, you know, when I started. And you just keep doing it. And you have to be kind of consistent about it. But there are a lot of traumas in our bodies that we don't know about because they generally a trauma is picked up between the ages of birth and 7, if you can imagine. I mean, that's hard to believe, but that's kind of when, as little kids, we have to be very careful what we say to them, how we treat them, because they're going to pick that up. And, you know, one of the ladies I worked with, Victor, she was 55 years old, and she always thought of herself as unworthy, bad marriages, bad friends, everything went wrong. So I said, well, you know, I said, there's more to it than just self-forgiveness. Let's go find it. And long story short, we found it. She was 18 months old and she wanted to help her mom carry a bag of groceries in. Her mom says, you're too little. She gave her a can of soup. And the little 18 months old, that's a baby. She dropped it. Her mother called her stupid, and you're not even worthy of carrying a can of soup in. Guess
Wow.
what? That stuck. That stuck for that long, and all her decisions and choices were based on her not feeling worthy and feeling stupid. So that's how deep some of these things that, you know, we may think of ourselves as, well, I'm not smart enough to do that. Well, I can never do that. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at this. You know, I'm ugly. There's so many ways that it can affect us. And you know, some of the things I see with new parents is when their kid talks, they'll tap their mouth or slap their mouth. Well, she's talking back. He's talking back. Well, they're really not. They don't know the difference at 2 or 3 years old. So what you're doing by doing that is you're teaching them not to talk. And guess what's that's going to do when they're older? It's going to shut them down, and they're not going to be able to use their throat chakra.
Mm, that's really interesting. And what would you say is like, it sounds like we're getting into a little bit about past childhood and how that um, makes it where you are do hate yourself and things like that. How can someone start that process of going from like not really, how do I say this, going from not really understanding why they're the way they are to starting to like uncover those past traumas, past experiences that made them the way they are, like that
Mhm.
one.
Our body carries every bit of information that we've ever had from the day that we were born. But if you believe in reincarnation, even from past lives coming forward, we store everything, and we store it in our cells. And that's why we call it cellular memory. But we push it down. A lot of times we push it down so far because it's something so painful, you know, just like being called stupid or, you know, ugly, whatever. So you can ask yourself, you can kind of go, you don't need me. I am usually your guide. And when I work on someone, I do get a lot of information about them specifically in terms of what's going on. And I kind of see with them. And I know that's some people that's hard to understand. But if you would just lay in meditation or contemplation very quietly, there's a lot of power in your silence, and use your breathing, because if you're just laying there, your mind is going to chatter. It always does. It drives us crazy. You always go back to your breath, but put it out there. You know, if something Why do I feel anger? Where is that anger coming from? And then you keep asking the questions backward till you find it. And you will. And it's not always the most pleasant memory, because if it was pleasant, we wouldn't have shoved it down and tried to hide it. And unfortunately, we can keep things down for a while, but sometimes they come out in different ways. And I'll give you another example. I was working with a guy, and he said that he says, I've got the worst temper. He says, I'm either really happy or all of a sudden I'm really pissed about everything. I said, okay, let's go try to find that. And I said, he closed his eyes. I said, what color do you see? He says, I see purple. I said, okay, what does that purple remind you of? He says, well, this is weird, but he says, I'm at church and it's that, I don't know what they call them because I don't go to church, but he had like this purple silk thing on him as a priest. I said, okay, what are you doing in church? He says, well, I'm with my family. He says, it's my mom, my brother, and my sister. I said, okay, what's the feeling there? He says, I'm happy. We're all together. He says, and we're really calm. I said, okay. I said, now you're going to leave church. I said, where are you going? He says, well, we're going home. He says, we have the same dinner every Sunday. I said, okay. I said, so when you get home, what happens? He says, my dad starts drinking, my mom starts crying, and they make all of us kids go in the backyard. He says, and I'm mad about it. I said, okay, so there's your connection. You're happy one minute, the next minute you're pissed because there's no in between. You're happy in church, you get in the car, you go home, and your family's in chaos. So that finally helped. Those are just, and those are just examples. But we do, he didn't know why he was like that. And it turns out he was 7 years old.
Wow. And I think another important thing is when we were little, like when we're little, our parents tell us, hey, don't feel sad, don't feel pain, like it's okay, don't cry, big boys don't cry, type of thing. And what that does is when we start getting to adulthood, we start to feel this sadness and pain, and we feel shame for feeling that pain and feeling that sadness. But it's important to counter that and say, yes, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel pain. These are normal emotions, and you have to justify those emotions. And once you do that, it becomes so much, like, it almost takes a pressure off of you, that you're not feeling shame for those emotions, and that you say, I'm supposed to feel this, like, why? And then you can ask why, like, why am I feeling sad, why am I feeling pain, and all of this. So rather than feeling shame for your emotions, you can actually justify them, saying, okay, I'm sad, I don't know why I'm sad, but I am sad. And then you can start to ask why behind them, rather than just shaming them and trying to suppress them, where they're out of your conscious awareness, where they affect you, you just don't realize they're affecting you. So it's really important
Absolutely.
to justify your emotions.
It sure is. And as far as men, you've really got a tough one for you,
Yeah.
because you feel it every bit as much as we do, but you've been conditioned not to cry. Big boys don't cry. and
Hmm.
and that's one of the most healing things we can do during a healing journey, is to cry. Because when we cry, whatever we're thinking about, whatever emotion that was that brought us to that, we're literally washing that cellular memory away with our tears and releasing it from our body. And maybe you don't want to cry in front of people, but truly it is the most healthy thing. It's just like a rain. The rain washes away everything. A
Hmm.
shower washes away, your tears wash away. And it's I have a very good friend who kind of coaches men that it's okay to cry. You guys have been given a really really tough scenario to try to follow, and it's not
Yeah.
fair. And the best thing you can do, Victor, is to cry.
Yeah.
Even during a sad movie, during anger, sometimes we cry in anger, but there's something in there that's producing that feeling of crying. So cry
Hmm.
and then go look for it, and then cry again to release it.
Hmm. And when I went through my first breakup, like, when I realized this person wasn't a good fit for me, um, I literally just went into the hotel room and I just started bawling. I have no idea, like, why. I had no idea what was happening in my brain, but I knew I needed to cry, and I just sat there and just like cried my eyes out for like 10 minutes straight, and um, I just felt so much better afterward. And I didn't shame myself for crying. Like, I just like I just knew I needed to cry. I don't know why I needed to cry, and I just felt so much better afterward. And
Yeah.
like it's very a big male stigma saying, "Oh, you like you got to be strong. You got to show strength. You always got to be tough." Like, and you're just repressing those emotions, and it's not healthy. And it's okay, like it's almost the more vulnerable you are, the stronger you are, because when you show this masculine, oh, I'm so tough, you're actually shaming that vulnerable part of yourself, and you're actually weaker because of that, because you're scared to show that vulnerable side of you. But the people that do show that vulnerable side of them, you know they're strong, you know they're able to show those insecurities and make their insecurities their strength. So it's so much more powerful to cry and make that a big part of you.
I
It's
love
crazy.
that you're bringing that up because what you're talking about is something it truly impacts your health when you hold things in. You know, if you can't get it out through your tears, you're holding it in and you're going to get sick one way or the other. You know, what is
Hmm.
on the inside eventually has to manifest on the outside. And we really underplay vulnerability. That, like you said, that is one of the biggest strengths you can have is the ability to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So that I love hearing that, you know, from you. That's a perfect way to express it. And they all, you know, I always tell people, everyone's heard it. Go have a good cry, you'll feel better. And you do because you're releasing all of that emotion, especially with a breakup. We get things pin up in us, and, you know, whether it's anger, it's sadness, it's, you know, remorse. And then we just let it go. And we
Yeah.
reframe it by, you know, what will I do different next time? What could I done different? What could I have done different? So
Hmm.
that was, you know, from our society, that was a brave thing you did.
Yeah. And can we talk about a little bit about what exactly happened? So when I did cry after that breakup, what is actually happening in the brain? Like is like all of a sudden like it's showing this emotion, but like what actually like is happening when that emotion is being released? Like what does the word released really even mean inside the
Well,
brain?
you know, I literally did a very short video about this on my Facebook the other day because it was given to me in meditation and it was a download. So I'm getting it from a much higher source than myself. And what they told me is that when when you're thinking about something or you have a situation which brings you to tears, it's the thought is in there, but those tears actually contain the cellular memory of the experience that you've had that has brought you to tears. So let's say it's during a breakup and you use some words you don't like and it makes you upset and you start crying. It's in the forefront of your mind. So those tears that you're crying for whatever reason are actually releasing the cellular memory of what made you sad or what made you unhappy. The reason you feel better is because you've released that memory of that experience and now it's gone.
Interesting.
Yeah, it
Huh.
was very interesting to me because I even say in this very short video I did, I said, I've never heard this before. I don't know if it's scientific, but that was what was given to me. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You know, you're thinking about something, it brings you to tears. The cellular memory is in the tears, and you're shedding it from your body. So therefore, you don't have that painful memory anymore.
Huh.
I
Yeah,
know.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was too. And, you know, I get these things that just I'll be curious about something and I'll be like, okay, answer this one for me. And that was truly one of my downloads the other day. And I thought, well, you know, that makes sense because if I'm thinking about something, the memory is in the tears are coming out of me. So they're flowing away in that tear, that memory's gone. So that's why we feel better. We've just shed it. We've gotten rid of it. You know, it's not to say there won't be a few memories or a few things that hurt, but overall, I mean, I can remember crying, and after, you know, my eyes were swollen, I had, you know, got my tissue and blew my nose, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's just like a release, like you've held something in so long that didn't belong in your body, and you've let go of it. You've gotten rid of it. It no longer serves you, so why should you keep it in there?
Yeah. And can you go into a little bit about possibly removing that shame behind showing your emotions? Because like as we grow up as kids, we learn to not show certain emotions like anger, um, and all these other things as we grow up. And can you go into a little bit about countering that and to actually start showing your emotions?
What I would say for you is because, like little boys play baseball, little boys play all these sports, and if they scuff their knee or they do something, what's the first thing the coach tells you? Suck it up. You can't cry. Get back on the field, and while I
Mhm.
understand that, that's been embedded in boys, teenagers, men for so long. So how we would counteract that now that we've become aware of that's really not a healthy mentality to carry around with us is we start our self-talk. And that can be just one of the best things you can do is take, even if it's 10 minutes a day, to just bring yourself to awareness of what's going on, awareness of what you're suppressing. Like in your case, it would maybe be tears. And you give yourself permission. You give yourself permission. This doesn't affect who I am. This enhances who I am. This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. I don't want to feel dis-ease inside my body. I want to release it. And a lot of self and words words are really critical when we're doing that kind of thing because
Yeah.
they call it spelling for a reason. You're putting a spell on people with your words. You can hurt them, you can make them happy. So when someone's telling you not to cry and all of a sudden click as a young boy, you can't cry, they put a spell on you. I know that sounds crazy, but that's very, very true. So you're going to counteract that with your self-talk, knowing what you need for your body, what you need for your health, what you need to keep you happy. And you're going to tell yourself over and over, it's okay. That's okay. If I feel like crying, I'm going to cry. Maybe no one has to ever see you. You don't have to tell anybody. But man, if you go in a room and, say you've got 3 minutes of tears in you, let it go, blow your nose, and go on with your life because what you've done for yourself is self love.
Mhm.
See, that's another thing. Love yourself enough to make things okay, to make whatever you need, and your body will tell you what you need. Make that
Mhm.
okay. Don't fight that. Do what your body tells you. Your body's brilliant.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to touch on is for every positive emotion, there's a negative emotion cycle to it, meaning that when you are really happy, you're always going to have some type of down regulation cycle. Only psychopaths are 100% happy all of the time. Like that's the only types of people that can always be happy. There will always be positive emotions. There will always be a negative emotion cycle associated with it. No one can be happy 100% of the time. It's a fleeting moment. And when people shoot for just happiness, it makes it where they think, oh, that car is going to make them happy, oh, this house is going to make them happy, but they're happy for maybe 10 minutes, maybe a week at most, and then they're like, okay, now what? And you have to realize it's like the journey to get there is what is it takes in order to be happy. It's not a goal, it's not a fixed goal in order to accomplish it. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And one of the things we need to learn as humans is nothing outside of you is ever going to make you happy. Happiness starts from within. Do you like yourself? Are you happy with yourself? If you lost that car, if you wrecked that car, cars can be fun. I've had my share,
Yeah.
but overall, your happiness has to start with you, has to start inside of you. And when you talk about happiness and not happy all the time, I'm the only thing I'm going to tell you is coming from coming from a third dimensional viewpoint. We live in a planet of duality, right and wrong, black and white, good, bad. And when you start living inside of yourself, when you start forgiving people, when you start forgiving yourself, when you learn to cry, everything that you're doing on that journey is raising your vibration. You might not even know it, but all of a sudden you will be happier. more of the time.
Hmm.
You will be at peace with yourself more of the time. And it's an inner type thing. Going inside of yourself is going to give you all of the answers. And so what I would tell you, and I've got a book coming out at the end of this month. I wrote a chapter, and I was going to write about forgiveness. And my guides told me, no, 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 this is not what's coming out again. And they said, same content, same outcome. So I asked, well, what do you want me to write about? And they told me, they said, we want you to write about transitioning from a third dimensional existence to a fifth. And that's really more of a mindset, Victor. It's not like a place. We still have to get up, put our feet on the earth and walk around. But there's so many little tricks that you can do, to ground yourself, to become one more with the earth. And what happens is in the third dimensional, you've got an ego telling you, you need the car, you need the money, you need the gorgeous girlfriend, you need. And it's really lying to you. And it just, ego can get bigger and bigger. You fight over sports. Okay, my team won, your team didn't. And then everybody's brawling in a football stadium. Like, what
Yeah.
is that? And
Yeah.
so what happens is as you, and believe me, I still have triggers. I have a lot of triggers, from my ex and certain things. But what you kind of learn is that you put that ego aside, and you're coming from a place of kindness. You're coming from a place of love. And what is hard to understand for a lot of people is that I can look at someone and I can tell you, I love you as a soul. I don't know you. I've never met you, but you've got a great
Mhm.
smile, and your heart expands. You go from being the little Grinch to this person with this huge heart. You have
Yeah.
empathy for animals. You have empathy for Mother Earth and them tearing her up. And you look around and see destruction, and it hurts your heart. So there is a way, once you're aware of it, to really make yourself happy all the time. And it's really strange because I want to say, you kind of disassociate from things like that, and
Hmm.
stay in a world of peace and love, calmness. Not always easy to do. I mean, let me tell you, there's times, I was pissed at one of my kids the other day. I wanted to reach through the phone and grab her through it. I'm like, no, just calm down. This is not your lesson. This is her lesson. So I'm
Hmm.
just, I let it go. But yeah, in the normal sequence of events, you go out and buy a car and, like, God, this is awesome. And then pretty soon it's like, well, okay, so that newness is over. What do I go on to next? Do I want the Rolex? Do I, and see, that's never ending, because if
Yeah.
you're looking for something tangible to make you happy, you have to keep going to the next thing. When you look inside yourself to make you happy, yourself is always there.
Yeah. And what would you say to someone that's starting that transition from always wanting the next thing, the next car, the next house, the next everything, to separating yourself, to start looking inward, to becoming happier? What's that like starting stage to really starting that process?
What I would have to go back to is why do you need it? Because sometimes you don't just want it, you need it. And that ego's telling you, I've got to have it. So do you feel insecure? Did you feel
Hmm.
insecure as a child? Did you feel like you weren't really worthy? Were you bullied? Were you not listened to? Did you not know how to use your words? Everything goes back to who you are and what's in there. What's the driving force of the why? And sometimes it takes a while to get to, because you've got to ask the questions and you've got to go backwards. But 100% of the time, it'll be something inside of you driving you to get that next thing to feel better. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, that was quick. What do I do now?
Yeah.
So it's what's in you. And if you can find it, you can figure it out.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's super important. And is there any other tips or any other things that you've seen lately that's been top of mind? It could be you see a lot of people doing this and should be doing that. Like, has anything been top of mind lately that you've been wanting to talk about?
I think the really important thing for me now, and I tell people I'm kind of coming out of the closet in terms of being in a little, not that I'm not the only one that can do it, but I look around and I see so much anger and hate and division. And I don't like that. And we don't have to
Yeah.
be that way, but we've been conditioned for that also, and that really started in 2020 with the COVID. If you didn't take it, you were horrible. And I got a lot of pushback on that. And I didn't let it bother me, but
Mhm.
but why can't we just leave things alone? Why are we pushing our ideas on other people? Why aren't we just letting everybody have a choice, which is what we're supposed to have? And that's another thing. You have to go back to yourself and why do you feel the need to push your opinion on me? Why do you feel the need to push me around from a bully stance? And a lot of people are doing that right now, bullying people into something they don't want to agree with. And that
Yeah.
really bothers me when I see that.
Yeah. It's almost like the weakest people are the ones that are always pushing their agenda on you because they want you to believe what they believe because it reinforces and revalidates them. So the people that are comfortable with what they believe, they don't care about like for example, I'm just going to use Republican and Democrat. If I'm a
Mhm.
Republican and I'm comfortable with that, I don't care to push my agenda on anyone else. Like I'm who I am, cool, awesome. And like I don't care what anyone else believes. But if I'm this person that needs to feel validated that I'm a Republican and I need that validation to prove who I am, then I'm going to try to convince all these people. I'm going to be like a preacher and like I'm going to try to push all these things as much as I can. And it's just it's just dumb. Like to be 100% honest, like there's no point in
Oh,
doing it all. There's no
I
point.
couldn't agree with you more. Could not agree with you more. And that's when you go back. They don't want to look inside because you kind of know the answer of what's going on. You can kind of guess what's going on with yourself. And it saddens me a lot because everything someone that needs to do that is coming from the outside, not the inside. So something really dark or ugly or hurt, a lot of hurt comes from the inside. There's a lot of pain people carry around,
Mhm.
and you don't want to face it, you don't want to talk about it, and you don't want to acknowledge it because like you said, pain leads you to depression, pain leads you to tears, pain leads you to many things that you've been conditioned not to show, when in fact it is the worst thing you can do for your body, for your soul, for your mentality, is hold things back and let them just fester inside of you till you really become a different person by holding those in.
Do you have any other examples of what people have gone through? Kind of like that church example that you talked about. I'm curious if you have any other examples of how a childhood experience has resulted in adults and how that behavior um, progresses. I'd love to hear if you have any other examples there.
Yeah, I was working with one lady and she kept remembering, and this isn't a pleasant experience, but it had to do with sex, and she didn't like it. She did not like it. And she was very cold. She held back a lot. And so I was talking to her and I said, do you want to go back and find that? And I knew it was going to be a very, very painful experience. She says, I've got to find it and I've got to get rid of it. And so we went back, and unfortunately, it was a situation when she was less than 2 years old, and her
Wow.
father would stay with her a lot. And there was sexual molestation from her father when she was about 2 years old. She says, I can remember I was just a little girl, but I didn't want him to see me in the bathtub. And he would always come in there and want to bathe me. She says, and he would do things to me that I didn't like. Well,
Wow.
that shut her down, Victor,
Hmm.
50 plus years. I mean, these
It's
things linger
crazy.
in your body forever if you don't get rid of them. But that molestation led her to a life of holding back, not wanting to be open and honest with people, horrible, for her marriage. It was really, really bad. And then we finally got back to that, and we released that, and she's doing much better. And
Mhm.
that's a really hard example. And another one was a gal who, when she was, I'm going to say, I think she told me she said I was 11 or 12 years old. Her brother, who was older, was watching her. She was taking a shower, and he says, get a towel on or something. We're going to a party. He says, you're going to stay in the car. And so she stayed in the car. Well, what happened was the brother went in there. Some friends of his found out that she was in there, and they went out there and raped her. She was like 12
Wow.
years old. And I was sitting there, and I'm like, my gosh, I said, this is weird. I said, your towel was orange. I just saw an orange towel. She goes, I've always hated the color orange. And so we had to work through, she had done a lot of work before me, but we had to work with, and this is really hard, is you do the visualization again, and
Hmm.
you see that person, and you forgive them for what you did. And you can get mad, you can get angry, you can scream, you can cry. They knew what was wrong, they did it anyway, and look what you did to me, but I'm a bigger person, I'm going to forgive you. And you see it in your mind's eye, and you
Hmm.
let it go. But there,
Yeah.
there's so many. And those are the really hard ones, because it hurts my heart to think that has
Yeah.
taken place and they've held that in so long. But
Yeah.
literally,
Mhm.
from age 2 to age 50, that's a long time to hold that ugliness inside of you and then find out it's your father.
Yeah, it is.
That's tough.
And like a lot of these voices end up like when you do shadow work also come into play as well. Like for example, I had this voice in me that constantly told me that you're a loser and everything else, and I had no idea that it was there, to be 100% honest. And I kind of like started to dive into my mind and saying like, okay, why do I not think a girl can love me? And then I realized this voice was there saying I'm a loser, like how like, and I try to like team up with this voice and like to work together to see how we can team up basically and figure out like where we can align motivations. And it was a really hard conversation because like like that person, that girl inside of me would say like, hey, I don't want to team up with you, you're a loser, I would never team up with you. And eventually I had to work through it and say like, hey, like you have insecurities too. We both have insecurities. Cool. Like, let's work together and figure out like how we can both heal these insecurities. And now we're all on the same team. Like, where I basically um had, like countered that and basically worked together on it. But it's really, really hard and really challenging, especially when these voices are alpha and things like that. But that was a really hard piece that I had to counter inside myself. But it's really about taking all these voices, establishing all the same motivations to be in the same goal, and where their goals are to heal, to heal those insecurities and work together. And once we're all in coordination with each other, you have to have some level of people skills in order to do all this. But luckily I do have those, and I've been able to coordinate all my shadows to work together. And it's been a really amazing journey on what I've been able to accomplish so far in the little time
Good.
I've been doing it.
Good, because it is hard to do the shadow work or the mirror work. And truly, and this was how our bodies were explained to me many years ago, is our brain and our body are one component. And we're duality, so there's two of everything. Our brain and our body are one component, but our mind and our soul are another. And our mind is what connects to higher source.
Hmm.
So it's really interesting to me, because the thing that I heard is we do have an angel devil inside of us. We do have someone talking at us all the time. And that's really, really hard. And it takes a lot to
Hmm.
face those fears, to face that and really make something of yourself. So I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. There's people that won't. And guess what?
Yeah.
They don't make it through, you
Yeah.
know. So
And
congratulations.
I usually talk about the requirements in order to do that is like you have to have some level of people skills. You have to um, be alpha enough, because like for example, with this particular voice in general, I had a really hard time countering it because it was the first alpha I've ever experienced. Like all my insecure voices, they're all like saying like I'm hurt, I'm in pain, help me heal. very beta, like, oh, let me give you comfort. And that's always how I've healed my inner insecurities. And then there was this voice that was like completely alpha that was saying like, no way, like I don't want to be with you. You suck, like type of thing. And I've
Mm.
never had that, like that such an alpha, and that alpha to alpha dynamic was really difficult. So I usually say before people start going into shadow work is to have that some level of like being comfortable with balancing that alpha, like having some level of confidence. And then the next thing is being comfortable, like radical acceptance, saying, hey, these are the
Mm.
voices inside of me. I'm not going to judge them for being there. I just need to know that they're there, type of thing. And lately I've been really diving into my daydreams. So I listened to a book and said like pay attention to your daydreams. And I would just analyze my daydreams and saying like, okay, I'm country dancing right now. Why do I like country dancing so much? And it's because I get validated by other girls. It's because I need them to validate me because I don't think a girl can love me. Like it's really interesting, like diving into like why we daydream and the whys behind what we think about. It's been really fascinating.
That is interesting. Now, have you ever meditated? Have you tried meditation?
Yes, I do
Yeah.
meditate, and
Good.
I do a meditation every morning, and to make sure that I'm progressing and I actively heal. And I practice basically doing a counter healing for every shadow voice that I have. So, for example, my inner critic
Mhm.
has a need to always be perfect in every single way, and I understand that. And the counter to that is, hey, you don't need to progress. You're perfect just the way you are. You don't need to progress anymore. That's the counter to make her feel better. And then I have to do a counter for my vulnerable child, saying that someone can love you for who you are. And then I need a counter for everything else. And I've basically mapped out my entire brain, and for every single voice, what their weaknesses, strengths, what their motivations are, and what their counters are, so that way I can counter them and help them heal in that process. They basically help it categorize it in my mind, to make it really easily distinguish between all of them.
That's amazing. Good for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried uh, the American Indians, the natives called it the in-between time. And it's right before you're falling asleep and right after you're waking up, not doing anything, but whatever you want your subconscious to capture. I'm happy, I'm smart, I'm anything you want your subconscious to capture and work without you even knowing it. Say those words to yourself, say affirmations, say positivity, say anything that will enhance you. And guess what? It comes to fruition.
Hmm.
You know?
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
because everything, 95% of everything we do is trapped in our subconscious. And if have you ever read the book, The Power of the Subconscious Mind?
Mm-mm.
It changed my life, and I read
Hmm.
it like maybe 3 or 4 times a year. The Power of the Subconscious Mind. Trying to think of the author and I'm blank, but I mean, you'll know the minute you see it. And it tells you about the strength of your subconscious and what you can accomplish, and how just those simple little sentences in those 2 times a day. And I'll be falling asleep, and the one thing I always say, no matter what, as I said, for every question, there will be an answer. For every problem, there will be a solution. And my day is made. Except I should have said it last night more, because we obviously had a problem today and it didn't go quite right. But we are here now.
That's very true. It's very true. Is there anything else that you've been wanting to communicate lately?
You know, I think one of the most important things that we forget about is self love. Self love it has to start with you. Everything starts, ends with you. You're like the king or the queen of your castle, which is your body. And I would really like people to watch their words when they talk to themselves. Don't be self depreciating, because the more you say something, when you put it into words, it like firms it up that that's going to happen. Don't do that. Be kind to yourself, be loving to yourself, and watch your world change. It's just that simple. Get out in nature. Nature has the cure for everything, whether it's walking barefoot, whether it's hugging a tree. That sounds like the crazy hippies of the 70s. I wasn't one, but I truly, I am barefoot all the time. You're connecting with those ions of the earth. If you can't get to the ocean, listen to the sound at night and let it relax you. And just know that, the kinder you are to yourself and the more you start to love yourself, the kinder you'll be to others.
That's really amazing. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. I know we can go on for this for 7 more hours.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Nicole, please tell the audience how to find you and how to find your business and everything else like that.
Well, I made it really simple. Everything is in my name. You can find me at NicoleHarvick.com. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. Pretty much every place. Just look for Nicole Harvick and NicoleHarvick@gmail.com. You can reach out to me if you have questions about this. And I do a consultation, a 30-minute consultation. You'll find my Calendly on my website. And we're in the Great Awakening right now, and it's going to be really, really amazing with what's coming. So I'm speaking out more and more about how powerful we are, how we create our own destiny, and that is a truth. It is a universal truth. Nothing can change that. So, if you know anybody who would like a little bit more information, I'd be happy to answer that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This is the Mind Workshop podcast. We'll